Welcome to the Faith and Feelings podcast. My name is Taylor Joy, and I'm passionate about helping you untangle and honor your emotions, authentically practice your faith, and integrate both into your everyday life so that you can experience the goodness and delight that comes from living in relationship with yourself, God, and others. Thank you for joining me. Let's get started. Since I shared about our new podcast summer series a few weeks ago, I've been so excited to introduce you to today's guest, Carly Marculier, a licensed therapist who is also my clinical supervisor at the private practice where I'm currently interning. She'll be joining me for a special series on emotionally healthy relationships. Over the next 8 weeks, we'll be exploring 8 core relational skills adapted from the book Emotionally Healthy Relationships by Pete Scazzero that are essential for building deep, mature, and loving connections with others. So let's dive into the very first skill. Listen in. Well, Carly, I'm so glad to have you back on Faith and Feelings.
Yes, thanks so much for having me.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. If I'm remembering correctly, you first started teaching these relational skills at your church a few years back, right?
Yeah, like right around like the end of COVID, we were trying to get people back into groups, and we thought, let's do something that'll bring people together. So this course specifically, emotional healthy relationships, was the one we started with.
Can you tell us a little bit about what originally drew you to them?
So EHR, which is how we refer to it, is part of Emotional Healthy Discipleship, which is the courses that the Scazzeros have put out. And so I was originally introduced to the first of the 2 trainings, which is Emotional Healthy Spirituality.
So
and
good.
And from there, so good, like highly recommend. And then after that, I was like, wait, there's a second one? That's great. So I then got connected with those skills, and the 2 are different in some sense. One focuses more on my relationship with God, and then the second one is kind of like the outflow of that, my relationship now with others because of my relationship with God. And so that was something that really was practical, right? For especially within the church community, we know a lot about God, we talk about God often, and yet, right, as we talk about often, there is this kind of disparity or this challenge between knowing a lot about God and then actually experiencing like loving relationships, and relationships are hard. And so this course has been such a gift to me personally, but then also to be able to gift it to my church has been also a gift to see other people stepping into this discipleship model and really experiencing what the promise of the gospel is, which is healing in relationships and being able to actually learn what it's like to be in the family of God, right? Or just because we come into Christ doesn't necessarily mean we're going to act that way. We have to learn how to do that. And that's a process of growth. And so these skills are just so perfect for that onboarding process of, okay, what does it look like to communicate in a way that's loving God and loving others? So.
Yeah, I love how Pete Scazzero puts it. I think it's in the intro to Emotionally Healthy Relationships. He says something like, loving Jesus doesn't automatically mean we love like Jesus. It really is this intentional discipleship journey of learning to love like him and letting his love shape how we love others. And I think that's where so many of us can feel discouraged because we love Jesus. We genuinely want to love others well. But like you said, it's a process of learning and receiving God's love so that we can extend it to others. So just to kind of get us started. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, it made me think of something that he uses in the curriculum about how like Egypt has been formed in us. And he uses this analogy from Exodus where like the people that were enslaved to Pharaoh for so long. And just because, they were brought out of that culture and that slavery and that oppression doesn't necessarily mean they knew how to live outside of it. And so it's such a beauty of, coming back to what it means to be a child of God, a beloved child of God, and how that functions both in relationship with God and with others. So such a forming process.
Yeah, so good. So as we dive into this first skill together, would you mind introducing it for us? How do you personally define it or think about it?
Yeah, so it's called a community temperature reading, and it's been adapted from psychological models of just communicating, right? And it was first utilized within couples counseling, and then they adapted it to kind of use within any family context, or even we could say any relational context, social, family, etc. And so the heart of this particular skill is really about opening up to a new way of listening and receiving, right? Like giving and receiving love. And oftentimes in our families of origin specifically, we weren't really taught communication skills, right? And they talk about this in the training. We spend thousands of dollars, right, going to school and investing in different things, and yet most of us haven't maybe invested much in how to communicate in a way that feels both honoring to ourselves and honoring to others. And so this skill primarily is rooted in the idea that we are made in the image of God, and our words and our personhood, our feelings matter, right? And how we do that, both in communicating, like my feelings and thoughts matter, so I'm going to communicate them, but then also in the receiving of your feelings and thoughts matter, and I want to hear them. And so that's what the skill offers us. It's just an invitation to learn, listen, and to be listened to. And for some of us, I know this definitely applies to my experience, that was new. That was a new way of being. And I, to this day, still use the community temperature reading. It's fabulous, and it's really versatile. So for some of you listening, it might not be, you wouldn't use every single piece of this, but you can pick and choose what could be helpful for just experiencing what it's like, or practicing, right? Getting comfortable with what it looks like to listen and to be listened to in a new way.
Yeah, as you mentioned, this first relational practice really centers on healthy communication.
Yeah.
It's built around 5 prompts that guide people in sharing their internal worlds in a safe, clear, and emotionally honest way. So to get started, can you walk us through each of these 5 prompts?
Yeah. So just for a visual, just think of this as like a little thermometer. And at the bottom of the thermometer, we have appreciations or excitements. And then we have worries, concerns, or puzzles. And then it moves up again, and it's complaints and possible solutions. And then new information. And the final one is hopes and wishes. And so I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up. Kind of how this is supposed to be practiced is whether it be with one person, one-on-one, or with a group of people, like at the family dinner table. We start with just appreciations. And I love that they start with this, because I don't know about you, but I know for me, receiving compliments or kindness was very foreign to me. It still is.
So hard. Yes.
It's so hard to receive that. And I just think it's because we're unpracticed, right? And so there's this, I do this all the time. I think about something someone did, and I'm like, wow, I love that they did that. That was so kind of them. We think it so often. Or, man, I just really appreciate this person in my life. But how often are we verbalizing it? There's this, Henry Nouwen talks about this in Life of the Beloved, and how like we are to bless one another, like speak of each other's belovedness. And I think this is what appreciations really do, is it allows us to receive what is true and good about us as a child of God. And so being able to start with that, I think, is a really helpful space to start in. It's just what am I appreciating about the person in front of me? And it can be something small. It could be something large that's happened, or just a long-term character trait that we see in that person. And that's where we start. We're just, I'm really excited about something that they've done, or something that we're hoping for in our relationship with them, or it's an appreciation for something that person has done. And then we move up to the next one, which is worries, concerns, or puzzles. I love that they use the term puzzles here, because who's going to say it?
Maybe that's so funny, yeah.
That's okay. We can get in our head like, I'm puzzled. Oh, I know what to do now. But what they say in the curriculum is all of these prompts are not supposed to be like heavy topics. So when we think about a worry or concern, like try to keep it at like a level 2. Later on, as we will get into in these skills, there is negotiations and more complex things. But this particular skill is more just foundational for like, oh, I'm noticing a worry, and how do I communicate it? So a simple one could be, hey, I'm curious why you keep answering your phone when I'm having conversations with you, right? Help me understand what's going on. Because oftentimes, right, and we'll talk a lot about this next episode, but lots of times we can assume right? What someone and why someone is doing something. And what that does is it automatically puts someone at a defense, right? I'm assuming negative. It's kind of human nature to assume the negative of someone else. And then also maybe personalize it, like they're doing this because they don't love me, or they're doing this, right, because they're a mean person, whatever. And so what puzzles allow us to do is bring up a curiosity with, I don't actually know the answer to this, but I want to understand, help me understand where you're coming from. And so that's where we can bring up something. And the other person on the other end of that, so if I were to say to you, like, Taylor, I'm puzzled, why you didn't call me back last week, then you could explain to me so that I understand better, instead of me thinking, wow, she just doesn't care. So that's number 2. And then we move up to number 3, which is complaints and possible solutions. I love this one because I don't know about you, but I got lots of opinions and complaints about things sometimes.
Yeah, me too.
And what the skill has really taught me is that if I'm going to bring a complaint to someone, I really need to have an opportunity to share what I want, right? A possible solution. And I think that that's what the beauty of this skill is it's not just coming with like, oh, I just want to tell you all the things that you're doing wrong, but hey, I'm noticing this and I really prefer this. And it gives us so much agency and voice there to say, I'm really noticing that you're on your phone a lot, and I'd really prefer you not be on your phone when we're sitting at the table together, or we're having a conversation, right? So it doesn't have to be, I think for me, for people that I've talked to, it can be really hard, and we can digress about like, man, my mom, my dad, my sibling, my friend, my spouse, whoever it is, they just aren't, we can complain a lot about it, but yet there is an invitation there in that complaint to really pause and say, hey, I'm noticing this. It's my opportunity and invitation to go to that person and say, hey, I've noticed this and I'd really prefer this. And that is that's the loving thing to do. And I think in our Christian society, sometimes that can be perceived as like not being peaceful, but we'll talk about this too, that just creates a false peace, right? And we're actually harboring a lot of contentment inside. So complaint, possible solution. The idea here is I've noticed, fill in the blank, and then I prefer, or I need, that's another one I like to use, or I would really appreciate if, right? So you can change that language to whatever fits the situation. Okay. Number 4 is new information. I love this one.
Yes.
As a verbal processor, it's like, oh my gosh, guess what? And this can be something that is really exciting, or, new information, but also I think it gives us an opportunity to really be known. And I think that's what the skill is all about, right? Is that I want to know you. And I also want to believe that you want to know me too. And so this skill kind of creates this question within this skill really creates an opportunity to know and be known by others, and to kind of mirror that excitement of like, that's so exciting, or, hey, new information, my car broke down. Like, it's still information that we need to know, and why that might be impacting the relationship. So it doesn't always have to necessarily be positive, but it can be just new information that's appropriate for the relationship. And then hopes and wishes, which is a really great way to end this, is being able to just express, right? Like, what are my hopes for the week? What are my hopes for, maybe this is a context within work that we're talking about, or maybe it's something, if in a child-parent dynamic, we're asking for something. So just a hope or wish throughout the next several days, whatever you're doing, however you're scheduling this skill, being able to kind of communicate what our hopes and wishes are, and allowing others to kind of be in that too, kind of being with each other in those positive or exciting moments as well.
So good. Thank you for walking us through those. What I love about this skill is how it really encourages us to use our God-given voices in relationships. So just to recap, I want to repeat each of these prompts one more time and summarize them the way that Pete Scazzero describes them. He says, appreciation say, I see you. Worries and concerns say, I won't bear false witness against you. I notice and I prefer says, I can assert my God-given dignity in a way that respects you. New information says, what is going on in my life is important. And hopes and wishes say, I am a human being with longings. These 5 prompts, when I read them or hear them, sound so beautiful. They really feel empowering, and I want to be able to practice them. But at the same time, I think many of us might come to this skill carrying some fear or hesitation, and maybe wondering, how do I actually put this into practice? So as you think about your own experience, what makes this skill particularly challenging to practice? Are there any internal narratives, fears, or relational dynamics that you've experienced personally, or that you notice tend to come up for a lot of us?
Yeah, I think the most evident one for me is that it's just new, right? So anything that's new is going to be hard. And I'll speak for myself, I don't like doing things that are new and hard, right? And so I think that there's a level of intentionality or openness that has to be cultivated in order to even just start this skill. And I would even say another fear would be the fear of vulnerability, right? If in this we're actually opening up to another human and saying, like, I want to practice this with you, right? Or I want to cultivate this kind of culture within our relationship, and that can be really vulnerable, especially if you've come from a family of origin that didn't do any of this, right? And I think that is another, I would say, barrier challenge, is that one of the questions that they reflect on in the group curriculum is, how did your family of origin do appreciations, right? How did they deal with, conflict? And those questions really help recognize, like, okay, the reason why this might be really difficult for me is because I just never was taught how to do this, or we just didn't talk about things that we didn't like. Complaining was wrong. And this is such a paradigm shift, right? And so I think that those would be the few things that I would say are the most difficult, just the starting point. And I practice this in various different ways. I've used it within church contexts. I've also used it in friendships of just like, hey, like if I have weekly hangouts with certain friends and we choose to do just maybe a few pieces of it, like appreciations and a new information, right? That can be sometimes a helpful one. And then add in the ones that maybe are appropriate to the relationship. And so I think the biggest takeaway for me is that it really does take intentionality and a willingness to be vulnerable, or at least take, this particular skill is a really great launching point, because it's not, there's a level of vulnerability, but it's not all the way there yet. We'll get there through the skills, but this is such a great launching pad for, let me just try it and see how it feels. And it's been such a gift to both give and receive it.
What tends to happen in relationships when this skill is missing or underdeveloped? Do you notice any common patterns or consequences?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's hard because this skill is so many different skills within it, right? So it kind of encompasses a lot of different, I would say, emotional, interpersonal skills. And so if we're looking at opposites, I think there's a lot of mind reading and assumptions, which we'll talk about next week. Our brains live on telling a story and making sense of things. And yet oftentimes it's pretty incorrect most of the time, to some extent, right? And so I think that can be a really big challenge for a lot of people, myself included. And so when I'm not checking in with those assumptions, or I'm assuming something about someone, it makes it actually really hard to appreciate them. And then I'm maybe not communicating that appreciation. And what I've seen in my own relationships and, the ones that I talk about with clients is that oftentimes there's this breakdown of not communicating, and right, that silence can be violent, as I think one artist has coined. And this idea of when we're not communicating, we're still communicating, right? Oftentimes absence is just as painful as harsh words. And so what I love about this skill is it gives us opportunity to really practice being with one another. And that's hard, and it's beautiful and good. And so I think that's the thing I see the most, is that if we're not intentional about it, it can be really easy to just go throughout our day and week and time and life without actually pausing and looking at a person that we're with in the face and saying, how are you? I want to know how you're doing. And what that has meant for me has been a gift. And so I encourage people to practice, just to take a day, take this skill, and see how it feels. It will feel awkward at first. And
it will. Yep. From personal experience.
It can produce a lot of beautiful fruit as well, the more we practice.
A lot of my close friends know that I'm a really good mind reader, meaning I assume incorrectly a lot.
Me too.
So what I've started doing in friendships is saying that line from, I think it's Brene Brown, the story I'm telling myself is.
Yes.
And I know we're going to dive deeper into that next week, but it's amazing how just small conversations or quick check-ins like this can bring so much clarity. This communication skill or this process of giving and receiving within relationships can be such a gift.
It's such a gift to give and to receive. And that takes practice. It takes so much practice, but it's such when you start receiving it and you start giving it, it's like, wow, okay, I can do it,
Yeah, it can definitely feel, clunky or awkward at first, but it's amazing how transformative it can be. So I'm curious, how has growing in the skill shaped your own relationships or changed the way you engage with others?
That's a good question. I think of it both professionally and personally, because my work is to be with people. And so there's an element of this temperature reading that I kind of do on a daily basis with clients, just with like appreciating how they show up in the room, or utilizing immediacy when there's conflict, or challenge, but also being able to like create space for them to feel heard and seen and known, and like, if a client has told me something past week and then they come back in and I'm like, okay, like, tell me the news, like I want to know the new information or not. It's, it's such a relational skill. Yes. In a professional setting, there's like things that we're focusing on, and right, the personhood of that person in front of me is so, I would say, is so much more important than anything else. Like I start there. And I think that this skill specifically keeps reminding me of that, and also revealing to me the areas of growth that I continue will need. From my family of origin and my history, speaking appreciations is really difficult for me. I write them often more times than I speak them, just because it's safer. It feels safer. And so it's kind of funny because I've been kindly reminded by friends, like, hey, I would really appreciate it. I've noticed and I'd prefer, right, that you use your words more. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like getting curious about that. Why don't I use my words more? Maybe it feels really vulnerable, or maybe I'm scared of something. And so this skill has taught me both to hold space for others, and then also get curious about how the Lord is trying to shape me into someone that can share and experience the love of God through others. Receiving feedback, receiving positive feedback has been another one that's been good for me, and hard.
Yeah, so good. Well, as a final question, for someone listening who wants to start practicing this skill, where would you suggest they begin? What's a simple first step they can take to get started?
I would highly recommend getting the book, because there's so much content, that the skill itself is wonderful, and the content around it, and the principles of just how God has formed each one of us to be known and to know others. Like, it's just so deep and rich. So I'd highly recommend that as a first step. And who, right? The next question is who. Who can you practice this skill with? Pick one person in your life that feels safe enough to invite into this process with you as a partner practicing this. And then, I would say the next piece of that is just to pray for what the Lord will do, right? It's tricky whenever we start talking about skills, whenever we start talking about practical things, there can be a burden of performance that's placed on it. There can be a burden of like, okay, to be a good Christian, I have to X, Y, Z. And what Pete Scazzero constantly repeats, and what I will reiterate, is that this is the work of the Spirit in our lives. And it's these skills are just the pathway to meeting with God. It's not the skill itself, but it's the way in which we can invite God in to like, teach me, show me in this. This itself is not, doesn't have to be done perfectly, but just taking that initial step to practice, both inviting God into it, and then also a friend or someone that you feel like, hey, I'd really love to learn how to do this together.
Yeah, so good. It's really about the relational intimacy and depth of connection we can cultivate with each other. Like you said, it doesn't have to be perfect and might feel clunky or awkward or even a little weird at times, but there's something really beautiful about the deeper connection these skills can help us create.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I think sometimes it can feel like, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, so how can I do this? Like the workbook has you have access to all the videos. It's something you could do with a small group or a group of friends. Like it's something tangible that like anybody can be a part of, if they're willing to go on that journey. So.
Well, this has been such a fun conversation, Carly. I'm really excited for next week.
Yes. Oh, I can't wait. Next week is a really good week, so look forward to it.
Isn't Carly wonderful? I'm so grateful for her time and insight. So as a quick recap of today's episode, what is the purpose of this communication skill that we just unpacked? It's this: to express your God-given power, dignity, and voice, and to build healthy relationships with others. So as we close, I'd invite you to reflect on what surfaced for you as you heard these 5 prompts. What is it like for you to express yourself in these different categories? Which one is easiest for you and which one is most difficult? Next week is one of my favorite relational skills that we'll be covering, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and I'll see you next week. I'm so grateful that you listened to today's episode. Thank you for spending time with me. I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on Instagram @TaylorJoy or through my website, taylorjoymurray.co. Also, if you enjoyed this conversation, it would mean so much to me if you took a minute to subscribe and review the podcast. This is an easy way to partner with me and is invaluable in reaching new listeners. Until next week.